The United States is facing a severe obesity epidemic, a condition that has become a major public health threat. One of the main hidden culprits is McDonald's, and an icon of convenience and fast meals, but the truth behind it is that it brings people closer to death faster than ever before. Today's story serves as a wake-up call about seemingly harmless temptations that ultimately lead to the worst consequences. A man died from obesity and was dragged into hell, where he witnessed the souls addicted to McDonald's being tortured. However, God showed mercy by giving him one more chance to turn his life around, and everyone deserves a second chance. Therefore, I hope you will pay close attention to this story to realize the importance of repentance and self-control. Leave a comment with the word Amen along with your name and city, and we will pray for God to protect and guide you. If you have supported us through Super Thanks, we sincerely thank you. This is the seed of faith you are sowing into your own soul. This act is not just support, but a small step affirming that you have opened your heart to receive God's message. Hit subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other warning stories during this final time. Now, let's begin the testimony of this man. My name is Jefferson, 45 years old, from Chicago, USA. My life could be summed up in one word: loneliness. But this loneliness wasn't just because I had no one beside me, it was because I couldn't find myself in life. 10 years ago, my wife Sarah left me. She couldn't bear living with a husband who was a townsman to her end. She took our son Michael with her and left me alone in the long, lonely nights. As Michael grew up, he could no longer accept me. He called me a failure and cut off all contact with me. Those words cut into my heart like a knife. I couldn't change, I couldn't stand up, and I couldn't do anything but drown in my bad habits. During those years, I tried everything to change. I prayed, joined support groups, and even tried working out at the gym. But nothing helped me escape the vicious cycle of loneliness and pain. Each passing day, I turned to another solution: food. Yes, those burgers from McDonald's, those crispy fries, and those cold Coca-Cola became my only friends. Every time I took a bite of a burger, I felt like I was coming back to life, even if just for a fleeting moment. That was the feeling I craved. No thinking, no shame, no fear, just the food. And it helped me temporarily forget everything. McDonald's became my refuge, the place where I found the only comfort in my long days of disappointment and despair. The fragrant burgers, the crispy fries, the sweet cold Coca-Colas, all of it felt like a balm for my soul, helping me temporarily forget the loneliness and failures of my life. But did anyone know that in every bite, I was pulling myself closer to destruction? I didn't realize that my body was becoming heavier, my health was deteriorating. The only thing I could feel was the insatiable hunger. It urged me to keep going back to those meals. By the time I was 45, I started to feel that my body was no longer the same. My heart was beating irregularly, and my blood pressure was skyrocketing. The doctor warned me that if I didn't change my lifestyle, my health would worsen. But I ignored those warnings. I didn't care. The burgers, fries, and Coca-Cola were still the only joys in my life. Fast food had become a habit, something I couldn't live without every day. I ate until I couldn't feel satisfied, eating more and more. One night, after devouring 3 Big Macs, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like something was stabbing my heart. Everything around me started to fade to black. I collapsed onto the floor, unable to stand anymore. And then the world disappeared. At that moment, I didn't realize that the warning signs my body had given me earlier were my final reminders. I had died without even realizing it, but my life didn't end there. As my soul left my body, I found myself engulfed in darkness so deep that it felt suffocating. The air was cold and heavy, pressing in from all directions. I couldn't see anything, only feel the oppressive weight of despair surrounding me. My heart raced in panic. Where was I? What had happened? Suddenly, a brilliant light broke through the darkness, unlike anything I had ever seen. It was pure, warm, and soothing, offering a sense of peace and hope amidst the crushing despair. Standing before me was a heavenly angel, radiant and full of light. The angel's voice echoed through my soul, "Jefferson, follow me." Despite the fear and confusion, an overwhelming sense of authority compelled me to obey. I took a hesitant step forward, feeling as though I was walking through thick, invisible barriers. The angel led me through a narrow, pitch-black tunnel. The coldness intensified with each step, and I could hear faint sounds in the distant screams, anguished cries. The voices became louder, filled with torment, until they were all I could hear. Desperate pleas for mercy echoed around me, each cry more filled with pain and hopelessness than the last. We reached the end of the tunnel, where a fiery chasm stretched out before me. The flames roared like a beast, snapping and curling violently, devouring everything in their path. The ground beneath me trembled as the fire raged below. I could feel the heat from where I stood, and the sight of the flames was unlike anything I had ever imagined, pure, relentless destruction. In the fiery abyss, thousands of souls writhed in agony, their forms contorting in pain as the flames consumed them. Their desperate screams mixed with the crackling of fire, creating a symphony of terror that pierced the air. I could see one soul, a man whose face was twisted in agony, his hands reaching out as if pleading for mercy. "Lord, please save me," he cried. But instead of mercy, the flames only grew fiercer, mocking his plea. I turned to the angel, my voice trembling. "What is this place? Where are we?" The angel's gaze was filled with solemnity, yet it spoke with great authority. "This is hell, the place of judgment for the damned. It is where souls who have rejected the truth and lived in sin without repentance are sent to face the consequences of their actions. You must witness this, for you are to bear witness to those who still walk the earth." The weight of the angel's words struck me hard. Hell wasn't just a myth, it was real, and the suffering was eternal. These souls were trapped, condemned to an eternity of torment, with no chance of escape. The reality of their suffering was overwhelming. My eyes caught a glimpse of a woman curled up in the flames, her body scorched and deformed. Her eyes, filled with endless regret, reached out towards the fire, as if hoping the flames might bring an end to her misery. But the fire did not relent. She cried out, "Please, God, have mercy," but her cries were drowned by the infernal roar. The angel led me forward, and the light from its presence cut through the suffocating darkness. We passed more souls, each one suffering in unimaginable ways, some shackled, others trapped in cages of flame, their forms burned but never consumed. Each soul was a testament to the choices they had made in life, the choices that led them here. As we walked, I could feel the weight of my own sin pressing down on me. I had never understood the full consequences of sin, but now, seeing these souls in their torment, I realized the gravity of living a life without repentance. These were real souls, suffering for all eternity. It was their choices, the choices I had once made, that had led them to this fate. The angel turned to me, its face filled with quiet sorrow. "You must remember what you have seen. The world still has a chance to turn back. You have seen the consequences of living a life of sin, and you must share this message with those who are still on the path." I nodded silently, my heart heavy with the responsibility of what I had witnessed. The weight of the suffering I had seen was unbearable, and I knew that I had to share this truth with the living so that others wouldn't make the same mistakes. As we moved deeper into the heart of hell, the angel's light remained a beacon in the darkness, guiding me forward. The flames roared, and the screams of the damned echoed, but I understood now that there was always a chance for redemption if we chose to walk in the light. The angel spoke one final time, "Remember what you have seen. Bear witness to the truth, and share it with those still walking the earth. The choices they make today will determine where they spend eternity." And with that, we continued on our journey, the angel's light leading me through the suffocating darkness, and I knew that I had a responsibility to bear witness and to share the truth of what I had seen. We walked deeper into the heart of the inferno, and as we moved through the dark, oppressive atmosphere, a bizarre sight emerged before my eyes. I stopped in my tracks, stunned by the absurdity of it. There, amidst the flames and torment, stood a McDonald's. The neon lights flickered and blinked eerily, casting an unnatural glow that contrasted sharply with the surrounding darkness. The golden arches that once symbolized comfort, convenience, and indulgence on earth were now twisted in a grotesque parody of their original meaning. Here, in hell, they stood as a symbol of destruction, not nourishment. The smell of burgers and fries wafted through the air, intoxicating and familiar. But it wasn't the comforting, nostalgic smell I remembered. It was rancid, foul, as though the very essence of the food had become corrupted by the flames that surrounded it. The scent burned my nostrils, a stark reminder of the insatiable desire that once consumed me on earth. But the most horrific sight wasn't the food itself, it was the souls trapped within enormous iron cages around the restaurant. Hundreds of obese souls were confined in these giant cages, their eyes bloodshot and desperate. They stared longingly at the glowing McDonald's, the food just out of reach. I could see their faces twisted in agony, their mouths watering with hunger, yet they could not taste the food. Their longing, their desperate desire for satisfaction, seemed endless. The frenzied hunger in their eyes mirrored my own from years past, when I too sought solace in food, in the comforting embrace of burgers and fries. But this was not the solace I had known. Demons, ghastly creatures with grey skin, sharp claws, and twisted features patrolled the area, their eyes gleaming with malice. They would force the trapped souls to eat, shoving burning food into their mouths. The burgers were blackened and charred, and the Coca-Cola was no longer a refreshing drink but a boiling, scalding liquid that burned the throat and mouth as it went down. The food was alive with flames, scorching their insides as they chewed. I heard the sickening sounds of flesh burning, of the souls' mouths contorting in agony as they tried to swallow the searing, fiery food. The souls' bodies expanded as they ate, bloating beyond their capacity. Their stomachs swelled grotesquely, skin taut and stretched, but their bodies did not break. Instead, the suffering continued as their bodies reformed, regenerating to endure more pain. As they consumed, they became even larger, more distorted, and the process repeated endlessly. Their bellies exploded from the excess, but their bodies healed almost instantly, allowing them to suffer again and again. They screamed, they begged, they cried for mercy, but there was none. Their voices echoed in the vast chamber, a chorus of torment that reverberated through my very being. I saw one soul, a man, his face twisted in pain, his body sagging in the cage. He cried out between labored breaths, "Please, no more. Let me die." But the demon overseeing him merely laughed and mocked. "You wanted to eat, didn't you? Now you will eat forever." The demon's voice was chilling, filled with cruel amusement. It was a perverse punishment, one that offered nothing but perpetual agony. I felt my stomach churn as I watched the souls in their suffering. The hunger they experienced was not simply physical, it was spiritual. It was the endless craving, the insatiable desire to fill a void that could never be filled. I remembered my own hunger, the same hunger that had driven me to McDonald's so many times, the same yearning that I had thought would somehow bring me comfort. But now I saw that such hunger led to nothing but destruction. The scene before me felt like a reflection of my own sin, my own weakness. The demon's laughter, the screams of the souls, the food that was supposed to comfort but now caused only pain, it all mirrored the emptiness I had sought to fill with food on earth. I began to shake, realizing that the consequences of my actions, my indulgence in the temptations of the flesh, were no longer abstract. I was seeing the truth of it, the reality of how sin and indulgence in earthly pleasures had eternal consequences. In that moment I whispered a prayer, my voice trembling with guilt and regret. "Lord, forgive me. I was blind. I was lost. Please, forgive me." My heart ached as I realized the true weight of my actions. My mind was flooded with images of the countless meals I had eaten in excess, the countless times I had chosen food over all else, over my own health, over my relationships, over my responsibility to myself. Food had been my idol, the thing I turned to when I felt pain, loneliness, or despair. But I had never understood the destructive power of that addiction until now. The angel beside me, whose presence had remained a steady light in the overwhelming darkness, spoke again, its voice soft but firm. "This is the consequence of gluttony, the temptation of Satan. You must remember this. You must carry this vision with you to warn others." I could barely speak, my throat tight with the weight of what I had seen. I nodded slowly, overwhelmed by the horror and guilt that filled me. The suffering of these souls, their never-ending torment, was a direct result of their uncontrolled desires, their choices to indulge in the pleasures of the flesh without consideration for the soul. The angel continued, its voice full of compassion, but also with the weight of eternal truth. They did not listen to the warnings. They did not repent. They chose their desires over righteousness. And now, They are here forever, trapped in their own greed. I looked back at the souls, trapped in their endless cycle of consumption and pain. The food they had once craved had now become their eternal torment. There was no escape. There was no rest. There was only suffering, forever and ever. As we began to leave the horrifying scene behind, I could feel the deep weight of what I had witnessed. I realized that what I had seen wasn't just a warning, it was my own wake-up call. I had lived a life of indulgence and excess, and though I had not yet reached this point, I saw clearly how easily I could have ended up like them, trapped in a cycle of unrestrained desires, lost in the pursuit of things that only bring destruction. The light from the angel remained my only comfort as we moved forward, but my heart was heavy. The suffering of the souls in that McDonald's would haunt me for the rest of my life. And now, I knew what I had to do. I had to change. I had to warn others, to speak the truth about the dangers of living for indulgence and craving. The lesson was clear: the pursuit of temporary pleasures, whether through food, drink, or any other indulgence, leads only to eternal consequences. We must live with discipline, with self-control, and we must not let the things of this world become our masters. If we do, we will face the same fate as these souls, trapped in endless torment, forever craving what we can never have. With the vision of the damned souls still vivid in my mind, I continued to follow the angel, knowing that my journey was far from over. The road ahead would be long, but it was a road I had to walk. For the sake of my own soul and the souls of others, I could no longer remain silent. I had seen the truth, and now I had a responsibility to share it. Walked deeper into the heart of the inferno, and as we moved through the dark, oppressive atmosphere, a bizarre sight emerged before my eyes. I stopped in my tracks, stunned by the absurdity of it. There, amidst the flames and torment, stood a McDonald's. The neon lights flickered and blinked eerily, casting an unnatural glow that contrasted sharply with the surrounding darkness. The golden arches that once symbolized comfort, convenience, and indulgence on earth were now twisted in a grotesque parody of their original meaning. Here, in hell, they stood as a symbol of destruction, not nourishment. The smell of burgers and fries wafted through the air, intoxicating and familiar. But it wasn't the comforting, nostalgic smell I remembered. It was rancid, foul, as though the very essence of the food had become corrupted by the flames that surrounded it. The scent burned my nostrils, a stark reminder of the insatiable desire that once consumed me on earth. But the most horrific sight wasn't the food itself, it was the souls trapped within enormous iron cages around the restaurant. Hundreds of obese souls were confined in these giant cages, their eyes bloodshot and desperate. They stared longingly at the glowing McDonald's, the food just out of reach. I could see their faces twisted in agony, their mouths watering with hunger, yet they could not taste the food. Their longing, their desperate desire for satisfaction, seemed endless. The frenzied hunger in their eyes mirrored my own from years past, when I too sought solace in food, in the comforting embrace of burgers and fries. But this was not the solace I had known. Demons, ghastly creatures with grey skin, sharp claws, and twisted features patrolled the area, their eyes gleaming with malice. They would force the trapped souls to eat, shoving burning food into their mouths. The burgers were blackened and charred, and the Coca-Cola was no longer a refreshing drink, but a boiling, scalding liquid that burned the throat and mouth as it went down. The food was alive with flames, scorching their insides as they chewed. I heard the sickening sounds of flesh burning, of the souls' mouths contorting in agony as they tried to swallow the searing, fiery food. The souls' bodies expanded as they ate, bloating beyond their capacity. Their stomachs swelled grotesquely, skin taut and stretched, but their bodies did not break. Instead, the suffering continued as their bodies reformed, regenerating to endure more pain. As they consumed, they became even larger, more distorted, and the process repeated endlessly. Their bellies exploded from the excess, but their bodies healed almost instantly, allowing them to suffer again and again. They screamed, they begged, they cried for mercy, but there was none. Their voices echoed in the vast chamber, a chorus of torment that reverberated through my very being. I saw one soul, a man, his face twisted in pain, his body sagging in the cage. He cried out between labored breaths, "Please, no more. Let me die." But the demon overseeing him merely laughed and mocked. You wanted to eat, didn't you? Now you will eat forever." The demon's voice was chilling, filled with cruel amusement. It was a perverse punishment, one that offered nothing but perpetual agony. I felt my stomach churn as I watched the souls in their suffering. The hunger they experienced was not simply physical, it was unsearchable. It was the endless craving, the insatiable desire to fill a void that could never be filled. I remembered my own hunger, the same hunger that had driven me to McDonald's so many times, the same yearning that I had thought would somehow bring me comfort. But now I saw that such hunger led to nothing but destruction. The scene before me felt like a reflection of my own sin, my own weakness. The demon's laughter, the screams of the souls, the food that was supposed to comfort but now caused only pain, it all mirrored the emptiness I had sought to fill with food. I began to shake, realizing that the consequences of my actions, my indulgence in the temptations of the flesh, were no longer abstract. I was seeing the truth of it, the reality of how sin and indulgence in earthly pleasures had eternal consequences. In that moment I whispered a prayer, my voice trembling with guilt and regret. "Lord, forgive me. I was blind. I was lost. Please forgive me." My heart ached as I realized the true weight of my actions. My mind was flooded with images of the countless meals I had eaten in excess, the countless times I had chosen food over all else, over my own health, over my relationships, over my responsibility to myself. Food had been my idol, the thing I turned to when I felt pain, loneliness, or despair. But I had never understood the destructive power of that addiction until now. The angel beside me, whose presence had remained a steady light in the overwhelming darkness, spoke again, its voice soft but firm. "This is the consequence of gluttony, the temptation of Satan. You must remember this. You must carry this vision with you to warn others." I could barely speak, my throat tight with the weight of what I had seen. I nodded slowly, overwhelmed by the horror and guilt that filled me. The suffering of these souls, their never-ending torment, was a direct result of their uncontrolled desires, their choices to indulge in the pleasures of the flesh without consideration for the soul. The angel continued, its voice full of compassion, but also with the weight of eternal truth. They did not listen to the warnings. They did not repent. They chose their desires over righteousness. And now they are here forever trapped in their own greed. I looked back at the souls, trapped in their endless cycle of consumption and pain. The food they had once craved had now become their eternal torment. There was no escape. There was no rest. There was only suffering, forever and ever. As we began to leave the horrifying scene behind, I could feel the deep weight of what I had witnessed. I realized that what I had seen wasn't just a warning, it was my own wake-up call. I had lived a life of indulgence and excess, and though I had not yet reached this point, I saw clearly how easily I could have ended up like them, trapped in a cycle of unrestrained desires, lost in the pursuit of things that only bring destruction. The light from the angel remained my only comfort as we moved forward, but my heart was heavy. The suffering of the souls in that McDonald's would haunt me for the rest of my life. And now, I knew what I had to do. I had to change. I had to warn others, to speak the truth about the dangers of living for indulgence and craving. The lesson was clear: the pursuit of temporary pleasures, whether through food, drink, or any other indulgence, leads only to eternal consequences. We must live with discipline, with self-control, and we must not let the things of this world become our masters. If we do, we will face the same fate as these souls trapped in endless torment, forever craving what we can never have. With the vision of the damned souls still vivid in my mind, I continued to follow the angel, knowing that my journey was far from over. The road ahead would be long, but it was a road I had to walk. For the sake of my own soul and the souls of others, I could no longer remain silent. I had seen the truth, and now I had a responsibility to share it. As I moved deeper into the realm of suffering, I found myself standing in a place that I could hardly believe existed. We had arrived at the very heart of McDonald's in hell, an area where the consequences of gluttony, addiction to food, and indulgence were painfully laid bare. The scene before me was more horrifying than anything I had yet encountered. The souls of the obese, trapped in glistening iron cages, stared longingly at the McDonald's that stood before them, their faces twisted in desperation. Their eyes were red, bloodshot with hunger, and they could not look away from the food just out of their reach. The flames in hell raged all around us, but here in this section, there was an added layer of torment: the smell. The scent of burning burgers, the familiar fragrance of French fries, the sizzling sound of food being prepared, yet this was not the comforting aroma I had once known. It was tainted, rotten, and seemed to mock their cravings. The souls trapped in their cages could smell the food, but they could never taste it. It was a cruel joke. The hunger that they felt was not just physical, it was spiritual, a gnawing, insatiable hunger that they could never fulfill. The cages were enormous, their bars sharp and thick, preventing the souls from moving freely. The prisoners inside could only watch, unable to reach the food that taunted them. I could hear their cries, the desperation in their voices was palpable. Their hands gripped the iron bars, their fingers bloodied from clawing at them in an attempt to reach the food, just out of reach. But it was always just beyond their grasp, like a temptation that could never be satisfied. Among them was a woman, her face pale and gaunt, her eyes glazed with pain. Her voice, weak and hoarse, barely rose above a whisper. "I ate to forget my husband's infidelity," she murmured, her words trembling, "but now all I have is pain." Her words cut through me, and I felt the depth of regret in her voice, a deep sorrow that echoed the same sorrow I had once felt. She had turned to food to numb her emotional pain, just as I had, thinking it would offer relief. But now, all she had was an eternal craving, a hunger that would never be satisfied. These souls, they remembered the days of indulgence on earth, when food was not just nourishment, but a source of temporary happiness. They remembered the joy they felt when they ate without restraint, when they allowed their desires to dictate their actions. But now, in hell, their indulgence had led to an unbearable punishment. They were trapped in an endless cycle of hunger, unable to escape the craving that drove them to consume and consume, yet never feeling fulfilled. They could no longer taste the satisfaction they once sought, only the torments once in mass, of forever hungry. I looked around and saw others, their faces etched with pain, each soul staring at the food with a look of hopeless longing. They too were once like me, indulging in food to fill the emptiness inside, chasing temporary pleasure, thinking it would solve their problems. But here in hell, there was no escape from the consequences of their actions. The demons, with their twisted and grotesque features, seemed to take pleasure in the torment of these souls. One demon, with claws as sharp as knives, walked up to the cage of a man who had once been massive in life, his body now emaciated from the endless cycle of torment. The demon mocked the man, holding a tray of food just inches from his face. It was the same food they had longed for in life, but now it was poisonous hot burgers, bubbling Coca-Cola. The demon laughed as the man tried to reach for the food, his body trembling with desire, but it was always just beyond his grasp. The demon's voice rang out, cruel and mocking. "You wanted to eat, now you will eat forever, but never be satisfied." The man's face contorted in agony as the demon pushed the burning food closer to his lips. But as he tried to eat, his mouth was scorched, and the food seared his throat, causing him to cough violently. His stomach swelled, and I could hear the sickening sounds of it ripping. But he kept eating, he had no choice. The cycle was relentless. The scenes around me were all too familiar. I remembered myself, my own desperate attempts to fill the emptiness inside with food. I had done the same thing, turned to food in moments of weakness, using it to escape the pain, the loneliness, and the feelings of failure. But I never realized the consequences, the price I would ultimately pay. Now, I saw it all laid out in front of me. This was my future, if I did not change. This was the reality for those who allowed themselves to be consumed by their cravings, by their desires. The angel beside me remained silent, but I could feel its presence, a steady light amidst the chaos of torment. I turned to the angel, my voice trembling with emotion. "Is this what happens to everyone who gives in to the Orhias?" The angel nodded solemnly, its voice soft yet firm as it spoke. "This is the consequence of gluttony, of giving in to the desires of the flesh without control. The temptation of Satan is powerful, and those who fall into it without repentance face an eternity of this torment." I closed my eyes for a moment, overcome by the weight of the words. I thought about all the times I had sought comfort in food, how I had sought refuge in my cravings, how I had fed my emptiness, believing it would make me whole. But now I saw the truth. I saw the devastation it caused, not only to my body but to my soul. The angel spoke again, its voice like a gentle breeze in the midst of a storm. "Remember this vision, Jefferson. You have witnessed the consequences of indulgence and excess. You must carry this memory with you and share it with those still living, so they may avoid the path that leads here." I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. I understood now. This was not just a warning for me, but for all those who were still on the earth. The temptations of this world, the things we chase to fill the emptiness inside us, they lead only to destruction if we don't learn to control them. As I stood there, my heart heavy with the weight of what I had witnessed, I realized how precious the gift of life was, how easily we could fall into the trap of indulgence, and how crucial it was to live with discipline, to learn to fill our lives with things that truly matter, things that nourish the soul, not just the body. The scenes before me began to fade, but the truth remained. I knew now that I could no longer live the way I had before. I had seen the price of indulgence, the price of feeding the cravings without thought for the consequences. And I knew that if I wanted to avoid the same fate, I would have to change. I would have to repent. As we continued our journey, the angel beside me, still glowing with that pure, unwavering light, guided me forward, and I knew I was not alone. Hope remained, as long as I was willing to accept it and live in the septier. After witnessing the horrifying scene at McDonald's, I continued my journey with the angel, feeling a deep sense of heaviness in my heart. The weight of the visions I had seen lingered in my soul, each step feeling more burdensome than the last. The darkness around us seemed to grow more oppressive, yet the angel's radiant light guided me forward, providing a glimmer of hope in the midst of such despair. As we moved deeper into the abyss, I came upon another area, one filled with a different kind of torment, greed, and the pursuit of wealth. This was a place where souls suffered for having lived their lives driven only by the desire for material gain. Their unquenchable thirst for riches, their obsession with wealth, had consumed them during their time on earth, and now they were paying the eternal price for it. I looked around and saw countless souls trapped in a scene that mirrored the consequences of unchecked greed. They were bound by enormous, glittering chains of gold, each chain connected to a heavy bar of money, and the weight of the riches was unbearable. The gold seemed to glow with a sickening aura, as though mocking them. They couldn't escape. Their arms, their legs were shackled to this treasure, and each movement was a struggle against the crushing weight of their own desires. The souls couldn't relax, they couldn't escape the chains that held them fast. Every time they tried to move, the chains pulled them back, dragging them deeper into the blackened pit that stretched before them. I watched in horror as one soul, a man whose face was distorted with greed and anguish, struggled to break free. His hands were bound to a massive chest of gold coins, and as he tugged at the chains, the gold seemed to burn his skin, leaving scars that would never heal. The man's eyes were wide with desperation. He kept muttering under his breath, "More, just a little more. I need more." His words were a twisted echo of the life he had once lived. It was as if the pursuit of wealth had completely consumed him. His life had been dedicated to amassing riches, accumulating wealth, and indulging in the idea that money could provide him with security, happiness, and status. But now, in hell, he was trapped in his own obsession, paying the price for his refusal to consider the value of spiritual wealth or to heed the warning signs of greed's destructive power. I turned to the angel, struggling to understand what I was witnessing. Why are they bound to these treasures? Why are they punished for seeking wealth? I asked, my voice trembling with confusion and shock. The angel's face was filled with a deep sadness as it answered. These souls lived their lives driven solely by the pursuit of wealth. They valued money over everything, over relationships, over faith, over the well-being of their souls. In their hearts they placed gold and material gain above God's teachings. They believed that riches would save them, but now they are trapped in their own pursuit, unable to escape the very desires that led them here. Their chains are made of the very things they worshipped in life. I looked back at the souls, their faces twisted with both regret and frustration. They were trapped in an eternal cycle of desire and suffering, unable to find release. The more they struggled, the more the chains tightened, dragging them back into the darkness. The gold that once symbolized success and power now represented their eternal torment. Each coin a reminder of their wrong choices, each piece of wealth an anchor that kept them bound to their sins. I could see another soul, a woman with hollow eyes that seemed to burn with a feverish desire. Her hands were grasping at a golden crown, the symbol of her earthly power and influence, but instead of a crown that brought joy or triumphs taught. As she tried to lift it, the weight of the crown dragged her to the ground, her knees buckling under its crushing load. Her lips trembled as she muttered, "I worked my entire life for this. I sacrificed everything, my family, my faith, for this." But now it had all turned to dust. The riches she had once believed would bring her power and comfort were now her eternal chains. The demon overseeing her mocked her, its voice cruel as it hissed, "You sought gold, and now you are enslaved by it. You could have chosen a life of humility, of service, but instead you chose the path of greed, and this is your reward." As I stood there, witnessing their suffering, I felt a deep sense of sorrow for these souls. It was clear to me now that greed, the obsession with wealth, had a way of enslaving a person, pulling them further and further from the true purpose of life. It wasn't just about money, it was about the spiritual blindness that comes with believing that material wealth can provide meaning, fulfillment, and security. The angel spoke once more, its voice heavy with wisdom and warning. The pursuit of wealth, when it becomes an obsession, leads to destruction. Greed blinds people to the things that truly matter: faith, love, compassion, and humility. These souls were blinded by their desire for more, and now they are forever bound by it. I shuddered, feeling the weight of the truth in those words. The lesson was clear: when we place material wealth above everything else, we risk losing what is truly important. Money, status, and possessions will never bring true peace. It is the love of God, the love of others, and the pursuit of spiritual fulfillment that should be our guiding light. As we moved on from that section of hell, the image of the souls trapped by their greed stayed with me, etched in my mind. The angel turned to me, and I could feel its gentle compassion. "You must remember this vision, Jefferson. You must share it with others. Warn them that the pursuit of wealth, when it becomes all-consuming, leads to eternal torment." I nodded, my heart heavy with the responsibility I now carried. I had seen the truth of greed's destructive power. It wasn't just about money, it was about the choices we make, the values we hold dear, and the spiritual health we nurture. If we live only for material gain, we risk losing everything that truly matters. As we continued our journey, I understood the profound truth the angel had revealed. The pursuit of wealth could never satisfy the soul. The riches of this world were fleeting, but the wealth of the spirit, the treasures of love, humility, and faith were eternal. And it was this truth I now had to carry with me, to share with others, so they would never fall into the same trap. After witnessing the unimaginable torment in hell, I felt utterly exhausted spiritually and emotionally. The weight of despair and guilt hung heavily over me as I stood amidst the suffering. But then, in the darkest moment, a brilliant light pierced through the gloom. It wasn't the harsh, mocking light of hell. It was pure, warm, and filled with an overwhelming sense of peace and hope. As I focused on the light, I saw him, Jesus Christ, standing in radiant white robes, glowing with a divine brilliance that outshone the brightest star. His presence was calming, full of love and compassion, his eyes filled with mercy and understanding. His gaze was not one of judgment, but one that saw straight into my soul, filled with both sorrow and unconditional love. I couldn't help but fall to my knees in awe. His love overwhelmed me, and I knew that I was unworthy of such grace. Yet in his eyes, there was no condemnation, only an invitation to change. "Jefferson," he spoke gently yet with authority, "you have seen the consequences of living for the flesh. Indulgence, particularly in food, is one of the primary causes of the destruction of the soul. Those who do not learn self-control will face eternal consequences, as you have seen." His words struck deep within me. I realized that my addiction to food wasn't just a physical problem, it was a spiritual issue. Every indulgence, every unchecked craving had taken me further from God's path for me. Christ continued, "You must repent, Jefferson. You must understand the truth of this world. Indulgence and excess are celebrated, but the only way to preserve your soul and body is through self-control, discipline, and a purposeful life. Your body is a temple. Protect it not just by following religious practices, but by living a life that is healthy, aware, and disciplined." I understood then that real fulfillment does not come from indulgence, but from aligning my desires with God's will. I had been chasing fleeting pleasures, but now I saw that discipline and self-control were the keys to living rightly. Looking up at him, I saw only compassion. Despite everything I had done, he offered me a new beginning. "Your life does not have to end in despair," he said. "You are being given a second chance to change and live according to love, self-control, and faith. I've already paid the price for your sins. Now, it's up to you to turn away from the temptations and follow me with all your heart." Tears filled my eyes. For the first time I felt freedom, not in indulgence, but in obedience. The chains that had held me were broken in his presence, and I felt a peace like never before. "I will change, Lord," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I will follow you." Christ smiled and his love enveloped me. "You are never alone in this journey. I will be with you, guiding every step. But each day you must choose to walk with me." His words filled my soul with peace and hope. I knew the path ahead would be challenging, but with Christ by my side I was ready to face it. For the first time I understood what it truly meant to live for him, to honor him with every choice. I was saved and I would never stray from the path of grace again. I woke up in a hospital room, the sound of machines beeping around me. I felt weak, but a new sense of hope filled my heart. Doctors surrounded me, and one of them said, "You were dead for 10 minutes, but a miracle brought you back." Those words sank in as I realized that during those 10 minutes, I had experienced something life-changing, something I couldn't undo. As the days passed, I began to physically recover, but I knew the real healing had just begun. I had been given a second chance, and I was determined not to waste it. The souls I had witnessed in hell, their suffering, still echoed in my mind. I couldn't go back to my old ways: addiction, indulgence, and self-destruction. I knew that path led not only to physical death but also to spiritual death. During my recovery, I made a vow to myself I would break free from the chains that had bound me for so long. I gave up fast food, McDonald's, the comfort I had once sought in a burger or fries. I turned to nourishing foods, vegetables, fruits, and lean proteins. Slowly I began exercising, light stretching, gentle walks, and over time I pushed myself harder. I created a new routine, one filled with physical activity, prayer, and a commitment to a healthier life. Every day was a conscious effort. Whenever I felt the urge to eat for comfort, I reminded myself of the souls I had seen in hell. I prayed for strength, and in that I found peace. I was no longer ruled by cravings. It wasn't easy. It took 6 months to regain my strength, but as my body healed, so did my spirit. I realized that spiritual transformation was more important than physical healing. I'd learned the hard way that true fulfillment doesn't come from food, it comes from faith, self-discipline, and a deep connection to God. With my second chance, I made a vow to God that I would live differently. I cut out fast food entirely and embraced a balanced diet: salads, grilled fish, and fresh fruit. I took up yoga and made running a part of my morning routine. Over 2 years, I lost 50 kg, and more importantly, I gained a new outlook on life. My body grew stronger, my heart lighter, and my mind clearer. But it wasn't just about health. I began reading the Bible daily and joined a support group for those struggling with addiction. I wanted to share my experience, to help others break free from the same temptations. With every passing day, my faith grew stronger, and I felt a deep calling to help others find their own path to freedom. I also became the husband and father I had always wanted to be. Sarah and I renewed our vows, with our son Michael standing proudly as my best man. It was a day of healing and redemption. For the first time in years, I was living with purpose and gratitude. I didn't stop there. I opened a health and wellness class, teaching others what I had learned, that self-discipline and spiritual awareness can change lives. I shared my experience, encouraging others to honor their bodies and love themselves the way God intended. Now, every day I live with a sense of peace and purpose that I never thought possible. I'm no longer controlled by my desires or mistakes. I've found true freedom, and with God's grace, I know anyone can live the life He intended, a life full of health, harmony, and purpose. Jefferson's story serves as a powerful wake-up call, shaking us to the core about the seemingly harmless temptations we allow into our lives. Each decision we make, whether it's the food we eat or the material pursuits we chase, has consequences far beyond what we may realize. These choices can have profound, lasting impacts on our health, spirit, and soul. But there's another temptation that's just as dangerous, if not more so: alcohol. While its effects are widely known, not everyone fully grasps the devastating toll it takes. So many fall into the trap of thinking they can control it, that they can manage the consequences, until it's too late. Stay tuned, because in the next part of this testimony, you will hear about the shocking revelations from a man whose life was nearly ruined by alcohol. The consequences he faced were so severe, they will make you rethink every drink you've ever had. He was once a carefree college student, living for wild parties and endless drinks, a life full of fun, without worries, until that fateful night. He died and met Jesus. In the moment his soul left his body, he was shown a horrifying truth about alcohol, a truth that changed his life forever. What did Jesus reveal to him? Could alcohol be a far more dangerous temptation than we ever imagined? Listen to his story, because this might be one of the most important stories of your life. Hello, Eternal Bible Stories channel. I want to share my near-death experience, but I also want to remain anonymous. Please help me do that. More than 30 years ago, when I first told my family about this experience, they turned their backs on me. They called me insane. Some even said worse things. Even my own parents, whom I no longer have contact with, tried to force me into counseling with our church pastor. Why is it that people who claim to believe in God refuse to accept that He has the power to reveal things beyond this material world? Why do they dismiss those who have witnessed His divine truth? I have no room for negativity in my life anymore, which is why I choose to remain anonymous while sharing my story. If you are truly ready to listen, then here is what happened to me. My near-death experience happened in the early 1990s, when I was a college student. I lived a carefree life, indulging in endless nights of party and drinking, without a second thought about the consequences. That night was no different. My friends and I went bar hopping, drowning ourselves in alcohol, laughing with my friends. The next, I felt my body overheating, suffocating. I stepped outside for fresh air, thinking I just needed a few minutes to recover. But when I went back in, the crowd danced wildly, but I felt like I no longer belonged there. After about 20 minutes of searching in vain, I realized that no one was coming back for me. They must have assumed I had left on my own. With no other choice, I decided to walk back to my dorm. The night was eerily quiet. The streets were empty, the dim glow of streetlights casting long shadows. I stumbled forward, my mind clouded by alcohol, but beneath the intoxication, a strange sense of unease crept in, an unsettling feeling that something was wrong. I reached a nearby bus stop and sat down on the bench, trying to clear my head. The stop was deserted, no sign of life anywhere. I told myself I would rest for just a moment before continuing my way home, but I had no idea how long that moment lasted, because I had blacked out. When I opened my eyes, everything was shrouded in darkness. The streetlights, the passing cars, the faint hum of the city, all had vanished. I had no idea where I was. I tried to stand up, but my feet didn't touch the ground. I couldn't feel my body at all. And then I looked down. I saw myself, still lying on the bench at the bus stop, motionless, lifeless. A chill ran through me, or at least what I thought was me. I couldn't scream, I couldn't touch anything. And that's when I realized I had left my body, I was no longer part of the physical world. Suddenly, an icy wind swept through me, carrying an unspeakable dread. I couldn't see it, but I could feel something there, something dark, something watching me. Then, without warning, I was pulled, yanked into the abyss by an unseen force. I had no control, no way to stop it. The world around me disappeared, replaced by an endless void, cold and filled with an overwhelming sense of despair. When I finally stopped falling, I found myself standing in a place darker than anything I had ever known. The sky above me was an empty void. The air was thick with silence, oppressive, suffocating. Around me, shadowy figures drifted aimlessly, without form, without purpose. There was no light, no warmth, only an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. And then the whispers began. At first they were faint, just murmurs in the void. But soon they grew louder, more distinct. Voices echoed from every direction, speaking in a language I did not recognize. They weren't just words. They carried deception, despair, and pure, unfiltered suffering. I wanted to run. I wanted to escape, but I had nowhere to go. And then I saw it. A towering shadow emerged from the darkness, shifting, writhing as if it were alive but without any defined form. I couldn't see its face, yet I knew it was looking at me. It didn't need to speak, yet its voice thundered in my mind. "You have belonged to me for a long time." I was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Fear consumed me entirely. I felt myself being pulled into it, being dragged into something from which I would never return. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg for help. But who would hear me? Then, in the darkest moment of my existence, a radiant light erupted from above, shattering the darkness around me. It carried a power greater than anything I had ever known, a force so pure and overwhelming that it made the shadow recoil. The light engulfed me, filling me with an indescribable warmth, and from within it a voice rang out, strong, commanding, and filled with authority. "This is not where you belong." The moment I opened my eyes, I knew something was wrong, but not in a way that scared me. I was looking down at my own body, lying motionless on the bench. Yet I felt nothing, no fear, no urgency to return. Instead, an incredible lightness surrounded me, as if I had been freed from an invisible weight I had carried my entire life. The dizziness, the nausea, the sluggishness of my body, all gone. In their place was a clarity sharper than anything I had ever known. I was fully aware of myself, yet no longer inside my body. I wasn't unconscious, nor was this a dream. It was something beyond logic, beyond anything I had ever imagined. The strangest part? I wasn't afraid. No panic, no confusion, just a deep, unshakable peace, as if my soul instinctively understood that this was natural. Then I noticed my vision had changed. I could see everything, front, back, above, below, all at once. Every detail, every flicker of light was impossibly vivid, more real than anything I had ever experienced. And when I focused on something, I didn't just see it, I felt it, as if I were connected to everything around me. That was when I saw the light. At first it was a faint glow hovering above the ground, but as I gazed at it, it grew stronger, pulsing with a living radiance. It wasn't blinding, but warm, inviting. A deep hum resonated from it. Not a sound, but a vibration that filled me with an indescribable peace. I knew, without being told, that I had to go toward it. The moment I willed it, I began to rise effortlessly, drawn into the glow. The instant I passed through, I was engulfed in a love so pure, so overwhelming, that it consumed every part of me. Then I was moving, fast. Yet there was no resistance, no fear, only an accelerating sense of purpose. I was traveling through a shimmering tunnel. its walls shifting between colors beyond the earthly spectrum. It was mesmerizing. And I was not alone. Lights, other souls, moved with me. Though we did not speak, I felt their presence, their joy, their awe. In this place, words were unnecessary. Understanding came instantly, deeper than language. Then I heard the music. It wasn't sound, it was alive, a celestial harmony woven into the very fabric of existence. It didn't come from a single source, it was everywhere, flowing through me, becoming a part of me. I had never heard anything so beautiful. The tunnel expanded, opening into an infinite radiant space. Light emanated from all around, but there were no shadows. Only warmth, love, and the overwhelming sense that I was home. And at the center of it all, waiting for me, was a presence so powerful, so familiar, that I knew beyond a doubt I was about to meet the one who had called me here. As I drifted through the luminous expanse, a profound stillness settled over me. It was not emptiness, nor was it loneliness. It was something far greater. It was the absence of fear, the absence of doubt, the purest sense of belonging I had ever known. There was no cold, no hunger, no urgency, only the overwhelming embrace of peace, wrapping around me like a warm current in an endless ocean. Then, in the distance, a radiant light appeared. It wasn't just bright, it was alive. It pulsed with warmth, expanding and contracting as though it breathed, calling me forward. I felt no hesitation, no resistance. My very being was drawn toward it, compelled by an unseen force, or perhaps by a longing I had never before acknowledged. As I moved closer, a melody filled the space around me. It wasn't a song in the way I had understood music on earth. There were no instruments, no lyrics, yet it was the most beautiful harmony I had ever heard. It was the sound of creation itself, vibrating with a frequency that resonated deep within my soul. It was a song of love, of homecoming, of something beyond words. And then, stepping from within the brilliance of the light, I saw him. A figure emerged, clothed in a robe so white it seemed woven from the very essence of light itself. He moved effortlessly, his presence commanding yet gentle, exuding an authority that required no declaration. His eyes, deep, endless, filled with wisdom and compassion, locked onto mine, and in that instant I understood something beyond language. He knew me. Not just my name, not just my life. He knew everything, every thought, every triumph, every failure, every secret I had never uttered aloud. And yet, in that knowing there was no judgment, only love. A love so vast, so infinite, that it made every definition of love I had ever known seem small and incomplete. He smiled, a smile that carried the weight of eternity yet felt as personal as a whisper. And though his lips never moved, his voice filled the space around us, reverberating within the very core of my being. I have been waiting for you, my child. A strange mixture of awe and confusion swept through me. I barely found the strength to speak. You have been waiting for me? Yes, he replied, and since you are about to ask, I am Jesus, but I have been known by many names. Hearing those words, my mind reeled. I had not been a devoted believer. I had never sought him, never prayed with sincerity, never lived my life according to any divine purpose. Yet here he was, speaking to me as if I mattered, as if he had always known me, always watched over me. You have been brought here at this moment because you stand at a great crossroad in your life. The choices you make from this point forward will determine not just your future, but your purpose. A weight settled upon my soul. What choices? I asked, my voice trembling with an unfamiliar gravity. Jesus did not answer with words. Instead, he reached out, placing his hand gently upon my forehead. The moment his palm touched me, everything changed. In an instant, I was no longer standing in the light. I was somewhere else. The first vision unfolded before me. I saw myself sitting in a cold, sterile doctor's office. I was much older, but the years had not been kind. My body was frail, my skin a sickly yellow. Across from me, a doctor sat with a grave expression. His voice devoid of hope. "Your liver has completely failed. There is nothing more we can do." I felt the crushing weight of regret as I watched my future self sit in stunned silence. I had wasted my life, drowning in alcohol, destroying my body, squandering my time. And now I was facing the inevitable consequence of my choices. Then, as quickly as it had come, the vision shifted. I was somewhere else, a community center, bright and filled with life. Young people surrounded me, their eyes filled with curiosity and hope as I spoke to them. I was older here too, but strong, healthy, alive in a way that my other self had never been. I was teaching, guiding, helping others find their way. And in that moment, I understood. This was the life I could have, a life of meaning, of purpose. A life where my existence made a difference in the lives of others. When Jesus lifted his hand from my forehead, I gasped, my breath shaking with the weight of what I had seen. "These are your futures," he said. "One path leads to destruction, the other leads to life. The choice is yours." A deep unease settled within me. "But why me?" I asked. "Other people drink, other people make mistakes. Why am I being shown this?" Jesus smiled, a knowing, almost playful smile. "Have you ever seen a puzzle? Each piece must be placed precisely where it belongs for the picture to be complete. In the same way, every soul has a role in my Father's plan. I cannot tell you why you are important, but I can tell you that you are. And now, so do you." His words struck something deep within me. I had spent my life believing that I was just another person, insignificant, moving through existence without consequence. But here, in his presence, I understood that my life had meaning, that my choices mattered, not just for myself, but for those around me. Jesus gazed at me with a warmth so powerful it nearly unraveled me. "Now, return to the world and become the peace you were created to be." I wanted to respond, to say something, anything, but before I could, the light around me began to shift. A force beyond my control pulled me backward, dragging me away from him, away from the warmth, away from the truth I had just discovered. I fought against it, desperate to stay in his presence, to remain in the place where I had finally found clarity, but it was no use. The vision, the light, him, they were all slipping away. And then, everything went black. As I stood before the tunnel, hesitation gripped me. Here, in this place of indescribable peace and love, I felt whole. I didn't want to leave. The overwhelming presence of Jesus filled me with a comfort I had never known, and the thought of returning to the broken world I had left behind was almost unbearable. Yet deep within, I knew the truth. This was not my time. Jesus had shown me the two futures that awaited me. One led to self-destruction, a slow and painful decline into regret. The other, a path of redemption, purpose and transformation. I had been given the rarest of gifts, a choice, a glimpse into the consequences of my actions, and in that moment, I made my decision. I turned to him one last time, my heart heavy with the realization that our time together was coming to an end. But before stepping into the tunnel, I couldn't hold back the question that had always haunted me. "Lord, I have heard about your return all my life. When will it happen?" Jesus gazed at me, his expression filled with love and understanding. He didn't seem surprised by my question, as if he had known all along that I would ask. Then he simply said, "Only my Father knows the time, my child." His words carried a weight beyond human comprehension, and in that moment I understood. This was a mystery no one could predict, not even those who had seen beyond the veil of this world. It was not for me to know the hour, but to be ready. I took one last look at him, imprinting every detail into my soul, the warmth of his presence, the depth of his love, things I knew I would never truly be able to put into words once I returned. Then, without another word, I turned toward the tunnel. Suddenly, a force pulled at me, powerful and unasked as my eyes flew open. Cold, darkness, the harsh scent of the city. I was no longer in the presence of Jesus. I was back in my body, back in the world I had left behind. I shivered violently, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The air felt heavier, the weight of my human body strange and was it real, or had I just imagined it? Doubt crept in, whispering that it had all been a vivid dream, a trick of the mind induced by exhaustion and intoxication. But then I noticed something odd. The lingering effects of alcohol, the sluggishness, the dizziness, were completely gone. I was clear-headed, more alert than I had ever been before, and beyond that I felt something, a presence, a knowing, as if an invisible thread now connected me to something far greater than myself. Slowly I rose to my feet, my body still unsteady from the shock. My hands were ice cold, yet a warmth pulsed deep within my chest, a remnant of where I had been. I pulled my jacket tighter around me and began the slow walk back to their mundane lives, unaware of the revelation I had just witnessed. Cars honked in the distance, laughter spilled from nearby bars. Life continued, untouched by the divine encounter that had just changed me forever. By the time I reached my dorm, exhaustion finally caught up with me. I climbed into bed, my mind still racing, but my body begging for rest. As sleep pulled me under, one thought echoed in my mind. Was it real? The next morning I awoke expecting the memory to fade, to feel distant like a dream slipping through my fingers.